Yay. Okay, well, hey everybody. I like books. I like to read books. I like to talk about books. I like to share books that I'm a big fan of with people and encourage them to read. I have talked about books on my channel before. Um, the last time we talked about books, we talked about books that I thought were important that weren't being discussed, excuse me, with the current TikTok oeuvre. But now I want to talk about books in general, and I thought, what would be great if we had a book club. And I recognize that this could be complicated. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to talk about books that I've finished recently and that I firmly recommend and think that people should go read, and explain who I think would enjoy them and why some people might like this. Oh yes, so much more soothing. There we go. I like providing dulcet tones to provide your soothing relaxation on a Saturday night. Do I count as, late night radio for some people? Perhaps. But this is Prax and I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. And tonight we're going to be talking about books. Books that I enjoyed, books that I recommend, who I recommend those books to, and I might be reading the first couple sentences of those books. Because I believe wholeheartedly in what is called the first page test. Not the first sentence test. No. The first page test. And the first page test is very, very simple. After many, many years of reading books, and for academic purposes, and realizing that there are books that I have read that, left to my own devices, I never would have read. I am way past the time of reading fiction that is not for me. That's fair time. I mean, there may indeed be people who are in the demographic where it is indeed already Sunday morning. But here on the eastern seaboard of the United States, of the North American continent, it is still Saturday night. And so I share with you a discussion based on things that I enjoyed, things that I think other people will enjoy, and who I think will enjoy those books. And I want to give shout outs to these authors because I think some of these books are going to be indie published, some of these books are going to be traditionally published. I will provide links in chat and on screen for anyone who wants to look for these books. Encourage you to go look out for these authors and find them and search and read them. I am a very, very, very prolific reader. I am also very much, I am not what most people would consider a booktuber or a book on Book Talk. I'm nominally on Bookstagram in the sense that the algorithm keeps suggesting things to me, which means at least I can find interesting indie authors to go follow and look up their books. And sometimes that's really great, and sometimes I'm like, I am old. Y'all, some of these Bookstagram accounts or Book Talk accounts, I'm like, y'all, I am full on in the acknowledging that I'm old because I remember when we weren't thirsty on Maine. Remember that? Remember that when that was a thing, is like, you don't be thirsty on Maine? Remember how that was the thing we talked about? But apparently that's no longer the case for some people, which is complicated, I guess. Y'all, it's a thing. And since I don't understand any of this Book Talk or BookTube or whatever's definition of quote-unquote spice, I'm going to be a whole lot more specific and tell you about things. about things that I've read, about things that I don't read, about things, and explain why. I'm not going to be using some arbitrary allusion or euphemism. No, no, no. We going to be blunt. Here. Look, I like blunt objects on occasion. But should we start cozy? Or should we not? Should we start somewhere else? I think we should start cozy because it's a little cozy right now. It's a little wintry. And this is a book that I think a lot of people will enjoy. We'll be getting into more complicated, more interesting books as the time goes on. I apologize if you heard the Windows alerts. Don't know why Windows alerts are going off, but who knows? It's Windows. Hello, welcome in. How are you doing tonight? We're going to start off with this book. Jennifer Penner, A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, book 1 of the Adena Shire series. As the author describes it, it is a Princess Bride meets the Hobbit and the Great British Bake Off. And I'm like, I respect her marketing. I kind of agree. Some of it I don't agree with after having read this book. I firmly recommend this book. I think that this book is a really great read. Everyone should enjoy it. It is a book of picture the Hobbit and the Great British Bake Off and positive descriptions of female and friendships and really great romance, which is definitely the C plot. Actually, the romance in this book is the C plot. The A plot is about our main character bettering themselves. The B plot is, well, the A minus plot is the Bake Off itself, and the C plot is definitely the romance. However, for those who enjoy romance and think it's an important thing to have, I would like to point out that this is a fated elven romance where where enthusiastic and verbal consent is an important part of the book, where the male love interest says that just because we're fated doesn't mean you don't have a choice. Enthusiastic and verbal consent. We love to see it. Also, in this book, at the end are 3 of the recipes that the main character uses to compete in the baking competition. So there's that. If you enjoy cooking and baking. She is currently working on book 2. You can actually now pre-order book 2 on Amazon. If we go to Amazon, I'm going to use the button that she created because it's useful. Book 2 is A Fellowship of Librarians and Dragons. I would like to point out we have Dragon Boy, and this is one of the female friends in book 1. And she is a dwarf who does tea magic. And that is all I will say, because that is way beyond that is spoiler territory. But firmly recommend, 5 stars, beautiful, beautiful story. Would say that this is definitely a book to buy. It's a relatively short book. It was a quick read for me. I try not to gauge what other people would read it by and how long it might take somebody, but it was a relatively short, easy read. A very good kind of good afternoon, cozy cup of tea, watch the snow fall. Really great little read like that. And I think I do know that the audiobook for this book is also available now, both on Amazon and I think it's on other sources, but it's a Kindle. It's Kindle Unlimited. Book as well. So there's that. And if I do this, I should be able to pull up. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm going to do is just give you the first book. Where is my books? Oh, Kindle. Kindle ebooks, there we go. My books, there we go. So this is the taste that you will appreciate of the they move everything around on here. Where is my library tab? Okay. Okay, what? Why are you no working? Book, why you no thing? Amazon, why are you such a butt? I understand the answer. It's because it's Amazon. Oh, it's because something is not working on it. Okay. Okay, got it, thanks. There we go. Here we go. So this is, it is, I don't even know how long. It is 30 chapters. I should figure out exactly how many pages it is. But to give you a taste, have a good one, Faye. Happy to see you. To give everyone a taste of a fellowship of bakers and magic, this is literally the first couple paragraphs. I won't go beyond that. Chapter 1. A time-infused raspberry tart sailed off Arletta Starstone's rickety old wagon as if it had sprouted wings and took flight of its own accord. The pastry smacked into the ground, and the sweet red fruit exploding through the thin shell and splattering its sticky juice onto the earth with a horrible little squelch. Wasted. "Oh, stars in heaven," the young woman muttered under her breath, her wavy hair sticking to the back of her sweaty neck, making the entire situation another level of worse. Arletta's nose wrinkled at the ruined tart's fruity scent as it mixed with the musty earth, pulling the wagon over to the side of Ardenshires' rocky dirt road. She quickly adjusted her pastries so no more might escape. Sighing, her gaze flicked up to the oak trees, stretching above, where a group of ebony-feathered crows sat cawing and hopping from branch to branch. They hungrily eyed the awaiting breakfast, which it would be shortly since she had no time to clean the mess she'd made outside the main street. She was late, again. The timepiece in her pocket had told her so before she had even left her cottage. Arletta quickly glanced around, checking if anyone had noticed her mishap. Other than the crows, it seemed no one had. But that is A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic. Firmly recommend. 5 out of 5. Totally love. It has a beautiful map in the front cover. Different baked good as chapter header art. Hello, Vulpes. Welcome in. And I am so I mean, it's 30 chapters and an epilogue, and then 3 recipes at the end. So, you know, for me, it was a really light, quick read. I firmly recommend. It was a great little cozy fantasy that ticked all of the boxes that I want, and I am eagerly awaiting book 2 and hopes that I find more about the orc dads who live next door. Yes, they're Orletta's next door neighbors who lived on the other side of this duplex from her are the gay orc dads, one of whom runs the bookshop and the other of whom is, I guess, a woodcarver, and I just need to know more about our gay orc dads. That's it. I need to know more about them. And I guess in book 2, we're going to find out more about them because, book 2 is about Dolly, and who is a dwarf who has tea magic, and she is working at the bookshop. So, yay, more cozy fantasy. But that is one of the first things I finished reading recently. It was a very, very quick read for me. I really, really do think it's a great book. I think people will enjoy it. And, yeah. That's it. I think you should read that book. Everyone should read the book. Next up, we might guess, here we go, is this book. James J. Butcher's Dead Man's Hand. Okay? This is, James J. Butcher is Jim Butcher's son. Yeah. Let's all feel old that Jim Butcher's son is now old enough to A, have a publishing deal, and B, have 2 books published. This is book 1. Book 2 is just released. You can find it now in Barnes & Noble. Let's all stop and think about that for a minute. Vulpes, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Dead Man's Hand or Fellowship of Bakers and Magic? Because I like both. I think both are great. They're very, very different. They're very, very different. A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic is, the Butcher's book, yeah. Dead Man's Hand. Very, very good. So this is not a spoiler. It's kind of a spoiler because it's just great. So this is, as I hit myself in the head with it, this is Dead Man's Hand. Like I said, I'm going to be using Barnes & Noble website unless I have the author's direct website, but I will put it in there. And because it's easy, and I like supporting Barnes & Noble slightly more than I like supporting Amazon. But if you have a local bookstore, go support your local bookstores. Some of them will even ship internationally these days. I'm just saying. But Dead Man's Hand, great book. Urban fantasy thriller, mystery. Well written, funny. Definitely knows the craft. Butcher the Younger, as I have decided to call him. Like Ajax the Younger, Ajax the Elder. Now we have Butcher the Younger and Butcher the Elder. Knows the craft. The first book is short. It's only, counting the epilogue, it's only 373 pages. It is a quick read. I mean, for me, I read this in like 3 hours, less. I read about 110, 120 words a minute, or 120 pages a minute, or an hour. So let's just put that in a box, and I'll acknowledge the fact that I am. It's not an expensive book. It's actually really well maintained. However, as certain people may have had to listen to me say, I was reading this book in a cafe. Just happened to be reading in the cafe, kind of chilling, enjoying things, whatever. But I was sitting in public, okay? I want you to understand that. I was sitting in a public place, in a cafe, and I had to literally take my scarf and stuff it in my mouth so I did not snort laugh out loud in public. When I literally read the line, this is the line, okay? I want you to understand. This line is in this book, okay? I'm not going to tell you where, I'm not going to tell you how, but this following line is in this book, and this line is, there was a silence that might have been poignant, if not for the buzzing vibrations of the demon dildo. Okay? That line is in this book. And as I said, and I am going to say a thing, and Pope will probably facepalm away for a little while as I say the following line that I told him, what I said to the people on chat. This is a case of Chekhov's dildo being a payoff. And I want you to understand that. That Chekhov's dildo is a thing in this book. And it makes sense. And the plot is well written. But yes. I can't even anymore. Oh, Lopez, when you get to that line, like, have you even... I don't know, have you started this book yet, Volpez? Alright. I'm gonna skip the prologue. Okay, I'm gonna skip the prologue. There's a pretty big prologue. There's a pretty decent prologue in the beginning of this book. I'm just going to read, like, the first 3 paragraphs of chapter 1 of this book, okay? This is chapter 1, not the prologue. The prologue is great. I'm just not going to spoil anything that happens in the prologue. But this is chapter 1. I'm not sure what I did to deserve this, Grimshaw Grimsby said, but I'm sorry. He stared at his tutu in the cracked mirror. It was pink. Not just calm, natural, happy pink. Aggressively pink. The kind of pink that made infants cry and attracted bees. The fabric was drawn taut over top his t-shirt, pulling the material tight until it scratched uncomfortably against the faded burn scars that marred much of his left side. Carla, the restaurant manager, shrugged her broad shoulders. Taco Tuesdays aren't pulling in the folks like they used to, she said. We need something shocking to get people's attention. I do magic, Grimsby said, turning his back to the mirror to examine the handmade taco shell wings that had been stapled haphazardly to the back of the tutu. Real magic! How is that less shocking than this? People can see magic anywhere, Carla said. You're not the only witch in the world, Grimsby, and you're far from the best. And I want you to understand that all of that description will pay off in this book. Go read it. Just saying. Well worth it. Solid read. Really good. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about all the things that I've read recently and that I'm going to be talking about tonight. And I realized I am not a Goodreads person that can be like, "Ooh, this book is a 5 stars," or "Ooh, this book is a 1 star." Like, no, that's not the way I review books. I Every book that's written has an audience. Some of those books are not for me, and some books I am not for them. And that's okay. Is the book enjoyable for who I'm going to be talking about? That's the thing. I will talk about and describe what this book is and who I think would enjoy it. If you're a fan of the original Wizard for Hire urban fantasy mystery aspect of the Dresden Files, you will enjoy Dead Man's Hand. If you like supernatural realism, magical realism, you will enjoy Dead Man's Hand. The book is well written. The dialogue is witty. And as I said, he is a well-written author who pays off all of this book. I have decided Butcher the Younger is better than Butcher the Elder at Chekhov's rules. I could see him writing a Die Hard novel. Die Hard the movie, not Die Hard the actual short story novel, but the actual movie, and following those same kind of rules. Everything that gets referenced in the beginning that you don't think is going to be really important will end up having a payoff and or being important at the end. And you're sitting there going, why is it Chekhov's dildo? But it makes sense, and it works, and it pays off. And it's not just for a gag, it actually serves the plot of the book. So, recommend, yes. I think that's where I'm going to go. Recommend or not recommend. And in this book is a firm recommend. Okay, how we doing? Oh yeah, if you are, Volpez, if you need less death in your life, the first book I mentioned on this stream, which was A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, nice cozy fantasy, and I think that's a way to go. And I agree with you, Volpez. Butcher the Elder has kind of gotten up too much in the overarching meta plot. The big sweeping scale of the Dresden novels, and I think he is losing the joy in that novel series, which is why I was very excited to see the he released the second book in the steampunk series he's been working on, which are like 6 years apart, but hey, whatever. He released the second book, and I haven't read it yet. It's the Airships book. I want to go reread the first book and then go and read the second book. I haven't read those yet. Read the second book yet. Switching back to quasi cozy fantasy. But still witty and snarky and funny, and also technically, I guess, urban fantasy. House on the Cerulean Sea. This book is best described as somebody took 1984, Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams, and the concept of cozy fantasy, stuck them in a blender, added some lime and some tequila, and poured you out a cozy, dystopian, magical, realist fantasy. Yes, Volpez says, a good friend's and former bookstore owner posted recently, Anne McCaffrey once said she had comfort books she kept and reread because of the feelings they gave her. I also have my comfort books. For me, it's like visiting old friends, and it fits so well. Like, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. There are some books that I will just automatically be like, I'm just going to reread this book. I know how it's going to end. I know what it will do, but it's okay. I'm going to go reread it, and I'll have fun with it. So, House in the Cerulean Sea. Um, older, gay romance, off screen. Well, on screen, but no sex in the pages. There's not even, like, there's a kiss at the end, very end of the book. Old school romance rules. But it's mostly focused on the main character, who is a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth. All of that is capitalized. And he is sent to this one particular orphanage for magical youth, and to evaluate it, because the youth who are living there are very much can't even pretend to hide to be normal in any way, shape, or form. And it's about how he deals with the kids that are there, and his position, and well, they call it the master of the orphanage, but, whatever. The head of the orphanage, the director of the orphanage, whatever you want to call it. It's a very English book. And there's a sweet, sweet romance that's definitely, again, C-plot. Romance in this book, C-plot. Oh, by the way, there is no romance in this book. Romance does not exist in this book. In this book, it's a C-plot. You flip open the cover, and there is a quote that says, from Shelf Awareness, right? Like, I don't even know who that is, but whatever. Shelf Awareness quote. Quite possibly the greatest feel-good love story ever to involve the Antichrist. Like, what do you do? What do you say after that? If you liked Good Omens, you will love this book. If you liked Good Omens, the TV series, you'll appreciate this book. I could see some people making a comment like Fool on the Hill from Matt Ruff. I think it's better written and a little bit more comedic, in a very tongue-in-cheek, Pratchett, Douglas Adams kind of way. For example, again, just going to read the first couple of paragraphs here to give you an example. Oh dear, Linus Baker said, wiping the sweat from his brow. This is most unusual. That was an understatement. He watched in rapt wonder as an 11-year-old girl named Daisy levitated blocks of wood high above her head. The blocks spun in slow concentric circles. Daisy frowned in concentration. The tip of her tongue stuck out between her teeth. It went on for a good minute before the blocks slowly lowered to the floor. Her level of control was astounding. I see, Linus said, furiously scribbling on his pad of paper. They were in the master's office, a tidy room with the government-issued brown carpet and old furniture. The walls were lined with terrible paintings of lemurs in various poses. The master showed them off proudly, telling Linus painting was her passion, and that if she hadn't become the master of this specific orphanage, she'd be traveling with the circus as a lemur trainer, or even have opened up a gallery to share her artwork with the world. Linus believed the world was better off with the paintings staying in this room, but he kept that thought to himself. He wasn't here to engage in amateur art criticism. Like I said, Douglas Adams, Pratchett, 1984. Main character works in a very pointless numbered job, and when extreme upper management tells him to go do something, he has to go and do it. Um, TJ Klune also has a number of other books out recently that are getting a lot of popularity, a lot of discussion, a lot of push. This I haven't read. I have read Under the Whispering Door. I'll talk about that one. I haven't finished that one yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. But this one, House in the Cerulean Sea, firm recommendation if you like cozy romance with a very dark world. And it's a very Pratchett Douglas Adams kind of look at a world where the way it's described is so tongue-in-cheek and so funny. It takes you a moment to realize how dystopian the setting is. How dark and slightly twisted the setting is. Yeah, I can't say anything else beyond the fact that then the main character Linus goes to to this orphanage on the Cerulean Sea, house on the Cerulean Sea, and number one of the children there is Lucifer. Well, his name is Luke, and he is very cute. He also he is 6 years old and quite enjoys terrorizing everybody he's ever met and telling stories. And possibly describing cannibalism, but in a way that's all about a small child who wants to perpetuate the story that he's heard, right? Like, very much a storyteller. There's a gnome, there's a fairy, an old school kind of source. One of my favorite, like, this is a mini spoiler, but one of my favorite one of the kids who lives here. Look, y'all. It's the thing that lives under the bed. It's a boogeyman. And he has a goal in life. And his goal is to be a doorman. Like, that's it. He just wants to be a doorman at a high-end hotel. It's so cute. Also, the wyvern collects brass buttons. I'm just saying. The book is heartwarming, but an interesting look at how simple acts can be the precursors to massive change in society. And sometimes how you can work with both in and throughout outside the system to affect change. Firm recommendation for those who like that kind of stuff. Oh, okay. We are next up with how do I spell her name? Yes. Okay, I don't have the book, but it's got here. I can show you here. Shifting gears entirely, let's talk about sci-fi. In addition to fantasy, I also like science fiction. I like well-written science fiction. I find that speculative fiction overall is really great in addressing, in analyzing, excuse me, in analyzing world states and discussing world state issues, in encouraging people to learn about their own cultures or cultures around them, ways in which cultures interact. All of these things are positive, and I think that speculative fiction, both fantasy and science fiction, can do a really great job of talking about those issues in such a way that they encourage them. I loaned my copy of this book to someone else recently, so I don't currently have it. But, and it didn't pop because weird things. Ancillary Justice, which is book 1 in the Imperial Radok series. Book 2 is here. Nope, that's book 3. Where's book 2? Mercy. I'll find it. But Ancillary Justice, the main character, the point of view character, is used to... It's complicated. So I'm going to give a little bit more detail than I usually do, because otherwise you wouldn't understand if I just say it's the AI for the ship, but it's not really the AI for the ship. Because the main character of the book is a portion of an AI from a ship. Because what these massive ships used to be able to do, particularly these massive warships, is they would be able to take dead bodies and use them as, well, almost dead bodies, I guess, technically, dying bodies, and integrate them into the AI network of the ship so that you could then have bipedal humanoids with opposable thumbs, do things that a massive troop carrier couldn't do. So the main character in this series is the AI for one of these massive troop carriers that had been inside, or at least a portion of the AI that had been inside one of these human shells when the rest of the ship and the troop carrier was destroyed. So it used to be a massive AI with multiple interaction points and multiple massive thousands of people or humanoid bodies that it could use, or the entire ship itself it could use to think and process, and giant server farms that it could use to process all of this additional information. And now it's limited to a single portion of that, trapped in a humanoid's female presenting body. And having to deal with an expansionist empire, the onset of the possibility of an invasion by a totally alien force, the ruler and military genius of this expansionist empire, who may also be a system kind of AI with multiple bodies that can exist simultaneously. It's really complicated, but so brilliantly written and so brilliantly explained. And Anne Leckie totally deserved the Hugo that she won for this book. It is such an interesting concept, and then so well executed. The main character and how they interact with the humans, with both the expansionist empire military officers who serve on them when they were a ship, the concept of whether these flesh pilots that the AI can use have any individuality left or sense of who they were as a person before they became a dead body that served as a flesh golem for an AI. The question of how this expansionist empire serves or does not serve the welfare of the people, how the bringing in these new cultures and these new worlds is also a PR game for all of those people in the home solar system, which is protected by a Dyson sphere, and so nobody ever really leaves that home solar system, so they don't actually know what's going on outside this. Time. Why are empires always the bad guys? Time. Not all the time, but in this case, it's actually the great question of, are they actually the bad guy? It's complicated. You're not really sure. It's really, like, this book series is so thought-provoking and analytical and encouraging you to look at different ways in which people interact. And just one of the most unique concepts for a main character I've ever read. Full recommendation. Enjoy. Go read it. Appreciate it. And then go read the next 2 books. Which are also equally as good. Well, kind of. Alright. So, exactly. Seek to become a hegemon. And for another entire mood shift, again, we're just talking right now about books that I have finished recently, and by recently I mean in the last month. Okay? So that is our cutoff. Books that I have finished in the last month that I want people to go read, I want your opinion on. If you've read any of these books, hey, give me a shout, give me your opinion on any of them. When I post this on YouTube, if you see this on the, leave me a comment about any of these books if you've read them and what you thought of them. Let me know how you feel about some of these books, or if these look like books that you might enjoy, go ahead and tell me which one you think you're going to pick up next. But shifting gears, no, we're going to come back to that one. No, we're going to stick with this one because it's the next completed book. That is the important point here, is the next completed book. So, this is another book I was trying to describe to Pope, because I really thought that Pope would enjoy this book, and I really want Pope to read this book so I can talk with Pope about this book. I really want to see if I can't... This is an author who I would really enjoy just sitting down and having a conversation with, because I think they are really a brilliant author who is doing some brilliant work in the fantasy genre. This is not a grim, dark book. It is, however, a very grim book. This is Gods of the Weird Wood. Look at that cover. Look at that cover art. Also, look at how big and thick this book is. Very nice. It is a very good book. Gods of the Weird Wood. I honestly don't know if Pope has started reading yet. Don't... Why can't... I'm looking for it. I know this book is sold in Barnes & Noble because I bought it in Barnes & Noble. Lord. Barnes & Noble, why you fail? Why are you failing me? Gods of these weird wood. Well, at least now we got John Gwillem popping up. Yay! Good morning, Mac. Welcome in. I have no idea. We're talking about books, specifically this book that apparently Barnes and Noble is telling you will not let you find, which I found. Oh, Barker, not Baker, Barker. That would help things. It helps if I spell the author's name correctly. Look, this is the book. This is R.J. Barker's Gods of the Weirdwood. It is very good. It is very, very dark. That's not the book. Books. Why can I not find this? Bastard Gentleman. Gentlemen Bastards? Lies of Loch Lamora, Red Seas over Red Skies over Red Seas, and or is that somewhere else? The different book series that I'm thinking of. Mac. Yeah, I need a little bit more specifics. Yeah, Gentlemen Bastards. It's still waking up. Oh, it's okay. I was like... Okay, why can I not find this book? Like... Hi, Barnes & Noble, you sold this book. I know you sell this book because I bought this copy at Barnes & Noble. Here we go. Here we go. Finally found it. This is a grim book. In a grim Brothers Grimm fantasy novel. The wood is a character as well as the setting. The wood is weird in the best possible definition of it. There is no romance in this book either. It is... I finished this book in 5 hours. This book, not counting the epilogue, or counting the preview for book 2, or the acknowledgements, is 623 pages. I finished this book in 5 hours. I literally could not put it down. It was gripping and thought-provoking and such an interesting look at the setting and the world and the magic system, which is all very, very unique. Hey, Coldrake. Hey, Jim. Welcome in. Again, as I've been doing for the others, I'm skipping the prologue and just going to give you like a little bit of a taste of book chapter 1, right? This is the first paragraph of chapter 1. The forester watched himself die. Not many can say that. He did not die well. Like, I don't want to read you anything else because that would be a spoiler, and I don't want you to spoil the just both the plot and the vibes in this book. And this is a case of this book and pretty much all of the books that I've been talking about really, publisher, except for Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, everyone that's been traditionally published is really suffering from a case of publishers who don't know how to write the back blurbs of books anymore. Like that, those three sentences, right? Those three sentences tell you so much about this world and this tone of this book. The farm in Wood Edge was the one rock in his life, the thing he had come to believe would always be there. Life had taken him from it, then returned him to it many years later, though all those he had once loved were corpses by then. The farm was mostly a ruin when he returned. He had built it back up, earned himself scars and cuts, broken a couple fingers, but in an honest way. They were wounds and pains worth having, earned doing something worthwhile and true. He liked it here in the farthest reaches of northern Crua, far from the city of Harnspire, where the rye ruled without thought for those who served them, where the people lived among refuse, blaming it on the war and not those who caused it. And you're like, that is the first two chapters of the first two paragraphs of the first chapter of this book. And then you read the back of this book, and you're like, one of these things is not like the other. The back of this book says, Kahan is known as the Forester, a man capable of navigating the dangerous forests of Crua like no one else. But once he was more. Once he was a warrior. Udini serves the goddess of the lost, a keeper of the small and helpless. When Udini needs to venture into the weirwood to find a missing child, she asks Kahan to be her guide. But in a world where land is won and lost for uncaring gods, where the forest is full of monsters, Kahan will need to choose between his past life and the one he leads now, and his choice will have consequences for the entire world. And you're like, after having read this book, yes, all of those things happen. But it is a fraction of the 623 pages that make up this book. Like a mere fraction. Tiny piece. And you're like, there are so many better ways to write this. Ah, yes, The Palace Job by Patrick Weeks. Patrick Weeks is a great person. If you have read the Gentleman Bastard series, go read Patrick Weeks. He is a brilliant author. But yes, this is book one, by the way, of a trilogy. And book one came out this year. And I'm like, but I don't, it's 623 pages, and I need book two, like, now. Can I have book two yet? No? Okay. Okay, I guess. I understand that life, Mac. Multiple pages to read through it. Alright, Alright, so that brings us up to tries to summon book two from the future. That's fair, Jim. I appreciate. I like reading and owning physical books, but I also prefer. I also read a lot of books from the library. Most recent books that I've been reading in the library, are actually a series of, I finished book 1 and 2 of this series, by, they're mystery novels, actually, by Sujata Masi, I believe. is the way I pronounce it. If I've mispronounced it, please let me know. I would like to make them correct, but um, the first book is The Widows of Malabar Hill. It's set in the 1920s Raj, India, and the main character is the first woman lawyer in India during the Raj period. And it is, Praveen is a very interesting main character. The author has also written extensively on actual Indian history, and she's a brilliant. I think she has a PhD. I believe, or she's working on her PhD. One of the two. I believe she has the PhD. But the mysteries are really, really great, and the world. She does a brilliant job of explaining the reality of 1920s India to people who probably haven't have read about it or experienced it. What is chat talking about? Oh, chat is talking about Sanderson. So, let me finish this and then we'll come back to Sanderson in a minute. So, book 1 is The Widows of Malabar Hill. Book 2 is The Sutapur Moonstone. Also a great story. Brilliant mystery. The biggest thing that I noticed between book 1 and book 2, and I'm gonna start book 3 as soon as I get it from the library. These are books I've been reading from the library. I really, really enjoy them. I thought they were really worth it. And I and my mom are doing a read along of them and just kind of doing our own little mini book club about them. They are the first book. The biggest thing is I think the first book the mystery is brilliant. The mystery is brilliantly written. It's gripping, it's engaging, it's thought-provoking. All of those things. The first book slightly suffers from an example of the author attempting to balance what the reader, and the author is writing primarily for a Western, British or American audience, British American or Canadian audience, and does not but she's having to explain a large number of things to people who maybe don't have that background in 1920s India. But at the same time, she's struggling. The first book struggled a little bit with Praveen, who is the main character, would have known these things, but she needed the audience to understand them. So it's a little bit of like, I want to slap you across the face, girl. You're not that stupid. You're just pretending to be. But book 2 totally fixes that. She's a lot better at dealing with that. But yeah, so firmly recommend this series. We've been talking about talking about the fact that I want to start a book club. So actually what I'm probably going to do is do these Saturday night streams once a week. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be reading in the week, and then, when I post on YouTube, let you all know what we're reading. And if people finish and want to come hang out and discuss things or talk about things more in depth, things we liked about the book, things we didn't like about the book, that's great. So I'm going to read book 3 of this series this week, because I can get it from the library finally, which is The Bombay Prince. Also, just look at this cover. Hello. Can we just appreciate the beauty that is this cover? This is someone who saw 80s, 90s Agatha Christie novels and appreciated them. And the artist, I want to know who the artist is. Do we have artist credit on this book? Do we have an artist credit on the book? Tutorial reviews, that's great. I don't care. I don't care about anybody else's reviews. I just want to know who the artist is. So I could call them out and support them, but I don't. But as you can see, if you actually pay attention, the book 3 has the highest rating in the series, and then book 4, I guess, will be the next one. So next week, for next Saturday, I'm going to read The Bombay Prince, which is book 3 in Sujata Massey's series. I'm going to post it in, again, when we post this on YouTube, it will be going up there, and we'll talk about it. But, so we'll talk about that on Saturday. If you have read it, great. If not, there'll be spoilers, and I hope it'll at least be encouraging you to read. But what is chat talking about? Let's check. Chat, oh yes, chat is talking about Sanderson. And I'm going to shock the world as a fantasy fan, as a sci-fi fan, as a tabletop role-playing game fan and runner of games. I don't like Brandon Sanderson as a writer. His books are just aren't for me. I appreciate them for what they are, and as I said at the beginning of the stream, there's an audience for every book, and I appreciate how that people really enjoy them, and I appreciate that people get a lot of pleasure from those books. I think he's a really great, he is very skilled at his craft at writing. They're just not for me. And I have come to accept that. And not all books need to be for all people. And that's fine. But I am not a Brandon Sanderson fan. Yes, that is a major problem, Coldrake. When you walk into Barnes & Noble or in the library or anywhere else and they're like, well, we have book 2 and 3 of this series, and you're like, I can't start book 2 or 3, I need book 1. Like, I need book 1. I need to read book 1 before I get there. Oh, I almost forgot a book that I finished. We need to go, I will have to go get it, because it's not, I pulled the stack, and it's the one book that's not in the stack, of course. Volpa says, for a distraction, have you watched Mrs. Situ Investigates? Yeah, it's on Acorn. Pretty good. Mrs. Situ Meryl Cial. No, I haven't. I have not watched this yet. Is a caterer with a taste for solving mysteries. Her sleuthing turns into an unofficial partnership with the dour DCI Burton. I want you to understand how hard it was for me not to immediately say DCI Barnaby. I saw a DCI followed by a B, and my big fan of British mystery brain immediately went, oh, that's DCI Barnaby. No, it's not. It's Burton. Reluctantly accepts that together they make the perfect pairing to fight crime. I'll have to look it up. Maxie asked the question of the book, reading the Poppy War Saga, which is a brilliant series. And I haven't read the 4th book yet, but I know what you're talking about. It's a it's a mini book that's the side series, and I saw it yesterday. I was actually in Barnes & Noble, and I saw the book. You're talking about Arif Khan, right? I saw it in Barnes and Noble, and now I can't find it on their website. Because they had the box set that included the trilogy, but also had the novella in it. And I think that's where it was. But it's not this version. But yeah, I read Poppy War, also enjoyed it. But yeah, I saw it. That will be the next one that I have to want to go back and reread the rest of the Poppy War. I enjoyed Poppy War, but the other two books weren't out yet at the time, and then I didn't go back to reading them, so I have to go back and read them all. But it's one of those, I'll go back and read all three at once, now that they're all out. Okay. Coldrake, we were talking about, you missed us talking about, James J. Butcher, Butcher the Younger, has a new book out, or has this, I've just finished the first book that he wrote, which is Dead Man's Hand, and then the sequel is out, which I haven't read yet, but that will be also on my list of things to read coming up. But yeah, I have to go back and read, The Aeronaut's Windlass, because the second book just came out, and I have to go back and read Aeronaut's Windlass, and then go back to the next book in the Cinder Spire series. Yeah, it's hard to get, like, it's one of those, I'm not a I don't so here's the thing. When I talk about books, I will almost always have read them as a physical copy. The reason being, for me and my auditory processing issues, audiobooks are very, very difficult, particularly audio fantasy novels, where they're introducing new or sci-fi or anything that introduces new words or terminology that I've never seen or heard before. So just for me, audiobooks are not the way to go. And then ebooks, well, I can sit here and read like 100,000, 200,000 word fanfic on my phone or on the computer screen and have no problem. I suffer doing that for a book. I think it's because it just, for me, is a struggle to the focus, just the glasses and thing. It's the way things are printed. It's the way things are, just written, I guess. I'd rather read a physical book. And whether that involves buying the books or borrowing a book from the library and reading it that way. I'm also a person who likes to collect books, but I also recognize the expense of collecting books. So what I usually do, if it's an author that I've ever read before, if it's a new series, I'll get book one from the library. And if I decide, 9 times out of 10, if it's a book that I've never even considered before, I'll read it from portions of it from the library if I can. And if I decide I like the book and I want to buy the rest of it, I'll go back and buy that first book. But I also like supporting the library because I think libraries are great resources and we need to use them more often. Yeah, and it's not the same as touching, holding, smelling a book. None of those are the same thing. But yeah, I'm a big proponent of engaging in the media. However, I'm also one of those people that's like, however you choose to read, whether it's listening to an audiobook or reading an ebook or borrowing a book from the library, buying a book, all of these are important means to engage. And as long as you are engaging with material and reading it, however you choose to engage with media, as long as you're enjoying the stories and reading the stories, and however you choose to define reading, it's a great way to do it. I embrace all of this, encourage all of this. So I am sorry, Owl. I thought I muted myself. Apparently I didn't. My apologies for coughing in your ear. But we talked about what I've finished reading. Oh, there's one more novel I finished reading, and I don't have the book with me at the moment, so I will have to pull it up on here and show it to you and encourage you to go read it and just appreciate the beauty that is this book. And that is The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma. Have a good lunch, Mac. And appreciate the beauty that is this appreciate the beauty that is this book. It is a South Asian inspired sci-fi fantasy novel with an actual enemies to lovers romance, multiple points of view, a la Game of Thrones, but done so much better than Game of Thrones. Like, Aparna Verma understood the assignment and understood that the different viewpoints are going to have different issues, and it's just like, oh. Cole Drake, stop being insensitive. I mean that in the best way. I'm joking. But I want to show you... Wait, where is it? Does the ebook not have it? The ebook doesn't have the image? No! Sadness! So inside the front cover of this book, even the paperback copy of this book, is a beautifully done piece of art for the two main characters. And you're like, God, I love this book. I love the art in this book. I love the characters of this book. Everybody in this book so far is very complex and morally gray in the actual definition of those terms, and not just a romance definition of those terms, which is totally fine. I'm not shagging on romance, but they are slightly different definitions. And you're just like, oh, it is... Hold on, I have to go get this book. Give me 30 seconds, I will go get this book. Hi, it works better if I unmute myself. Yes, Phoenix King, absolutely beautiful. Beautiful book. Beautiful cover, beautifully designed, nice, really, really well written. And I started following this book because I was on Instagram and I came across the author and she was talking about the introduction. And then she showed this. Do you see this? Do you see this piece of art on the inside of this front cover? Do you see this? Do you see how beautiful this is? I had to go buy it the minute it came out. I bought this the first week it came out. Not the first day, but the first week. It was absolutely worth it. I was reading this book, following this book, appreciating this book, um, appreciating the aesthetic and conception of a South Indian fantasy, South Indian and subcontinent inspired fantasy novel. It is absolutely beautiful. Totally recommend. And like all of the other books, I'm gonna just give you a small taste of well, in this case, but I can't even give you like if I give you a taste, it's not gonna be fair because like there's so many different viewpoints. It'd be fair. I guess I'll just show you the pretty map on the inside cover. So you can see how that worked. It is absolutely gorgeous. I firmly recommend this book. And you just get to the end and you're like, oh my god, when is book 2 coming out and how can I get to it and when is it going to be a thing and oh my god, it's if you know anything about Bollywood movies, there's a scene where the two main characters, again, enemies to lovers, slow burn, female, she has fire magic, he's an assassin who may or may not have attempted to kill members of her family. It's complicated, right? Like, it's literally complicated. And there's a ballroom scene and there's a dancing scene, and her dupta gets caught on his wrist, and you're just like, if you know anything about Bollywood movies, go read this book. Go read this book. This is absolutely beautiful. But yeah, it is an absolutely beautiful thing that will be absolutely worth it, and I firmly recommend it. Go read this book. In other beautiful fantasy, rounding out books that I have finished, in the last little while, is another one of my books by my favorite author that I didn't know got a new series, and I was like, oh my god, I need to go follow this series immediately because it's absolutely wonderful and it's one of my favorite authors. This is a quasi sequel, sort of, in the sense that it is a it comes after the first book, but the first book is really a standalone, and this is a spin-off series. This is a spin-off series about an NPC in the first book, and the first book is called The Goblin Emperor. Also, one of my all-time favorite reads. I recommend it to everybody. I think everybody needs to read this book. I don't like the new cover. I think the original cover is better. But what do I know? By Katherine Anderson. I'm not a fan of this new cover, but that's the new book. But if you look at... This is the original cover, and I think this original cover is so much prettier. And it's like, it's goblins and elves, but they're really complicated inter species empire, and airships and magic and steampunk magic powered airships, and just, oh my god, it's absolutely wonderful and absolutely beautiful and a brilliant, brilliant story. And then I was in Barnes and Noble like a month ago, and I found out there's this. Which, yeah, you may have noticed that I'm a person that just sticks the receipt in because it may or may not count. This Witness for the Dead. This is a short mystery novel that is about one of the NPCs in Goblin Emperor. Jim, you will love this series. Go read these books. Go read the Goblin Emperor and be happy, sort of, about the whole thing. Whatever. And but Witness for the Dead is absolutely heartwarming in a sense for one of the characters who is, oh, I don't want to give any spoilers for the first book, but he's not a villain, but he's not quite a red herring either, because everybody knows he's not really the villain, but he's also hiding stuff, and some of that has to do with his sexual identity and other things that may or may not be going on. Also the fact that he's literally a priest for the god of death, and his job is to touch dead bodies and take on the memories of their last life and or talk to them and see if they have any leftover things and then tell people about them for free. Yeah, it's just, oh god, such a thing. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like, also, look at this cover. Can we appreciate the beauty that is this cover for Witness of the Dead? Beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful, beautiful book. Does it have the... I'll just read the back. When the young half-goblin Emperor Adrahisvar VII sought to learn who had set the bombs that killed his father and half-brothers, he turned to an obscure resident of his father's court, a prelate of Ulis and a witness for the dead. Thara Chelahar found the truth, though it did him no good to discover it. He lost his place as a retainer to his cousin, the former empress, and made far too many enemies among the many factions vying for power in the new court. The favor of the emperor is a dangerous coin. Now Chelahar lives in the city of Amalo, far from the court, though not exactly in exile. He has not escaped from politics, but his position gives him the ability to serve the common people of the city, which is his preference. He lives modestly, but his decency and fundamental honesty will not permit him to live quietly. As a witness for the dead, he can, sometimes, speak to the recently dead, see the last thing they saw, know the last thought they had, experience the last thing they felt. It is his duty to use that ability to resolve disputes, to ascertain the intent of the dead, and to find the killers of the murdered. Chelahar's skills lead him out of the quiet and into a morass of treachery, murder, and injustice. No matter his own background, with the imperial house, Chelahar will stand with the commoners and possibly find a light in the darkness. So, I am going to be reading book 2 of this series. I finished book 1. Book 2 is out. That is The Grief of Stones. And then book 3 will be coming soon. Have they released the title for book 3 yet? I don't think so. Yeah. So the next book I'm going to read is, so I'm also probably going to read, if I can, Grief of Stones for next week. So book 3 of the Paveen, which is the Indian Mystery series. Book 2 of this series. So it's 2 books. Exactly. Thank goodness for libraries. Yeah, it's a very... I think you would really like it, Jim. I think it's a good book for you. So I think it would be a really great series. Addison is definitely an author I think you would like. Have you ever read The Twisted Weird West World of Golgotha by R.S. Belcher? No, I haven't read those yet, but I have heard about them. Chris Spivey, who is the author of Haunted West, the tabletop RPG game series, he was mentioning a couple books that he had been reading when he was writing that game, and he mentioned that series. So, you know, I think this will be very, very... I'm looking forward to reading that next book. But I'm probably going to be having to order it myself. But that's the thing. It's not in stock at any of my stores, and it's not in my library, so I'm going to have to order that book. It will be great. So yeah. Shifting gears now. We finished all the books that I have recently read. And so I've given you the titles of the next couple books that I'm going to read this week based on books that I've finished the most recent previous book in that series for. But we're going to shift gears into books that I'm currently reading. I'm going to go ahead and take a short break before then, like 5, maybe 10 minutes. I'm out of water. And I need to get some of that. But I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to run an ad at this time. But everybody else stretch, and I'll be right back. And I'll see you soon. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you're refreshed, stretched, bioed, done all of those good things like I have. I have more water in my Fisher House Foundation water mug. Shout out to them, because apparently, hey, they're good people and we appreciate them. I see you, Jim. But okay, so we finished going through all the books I've recently finished. And now we're into books that I have begun, right? Okay, so first of those in just no particular order, just because I like this book, is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. Look at the pretty... Look at it. Look at how pretty this book is. I love it so much. But, I recently started this book. I have not finished it yet. I've been hearing people talk about, like, being a mood reader or having a list and a TBR, and I'm just like, I guess I'm a mood reader because I don't have books around long enough to have a TBR. I just like, oh, I want to read that book, and I pick the book up and I read it and I finish it, and then I go on to the next book. So I guess it's that level of I am a mood reader because I just don't hoard books. Well, no, I hoard books. I hoard books all the time. But I don't hoard books that I haven't started or don't plan to start in the near future, I guess. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Stardust Thief, Chelsea Abdullah. Absolutely gorgeous. Another book with a beautiful, beautiful map on the inside. Look at the pretty on that one. That one is so pretty. And in-world historical texts on old paper done in the book. I just love a well thought out book like this. Like, the book itself is thought out. It also has shifting viewpoint. Its shifting viewpoint is between the two main characters. And it is... Oh god, I just love the smell of books. It is a book that again, I have my first page test, right? Like, if I'm in a bookstore or I'm in the library and I see something, it's like, oh, that looks interesting. Hi. I look and see the cover. Oh, that looks interesting. Let me flip the back. Okay. Neither here nor there, but long ago, Luli al-Nazari is the Midnight Merchant, a criminal who, with the help of her djinn bodyguard, hunts and sells illegal magic. When she saves the life of a cowardly prince, she draws the attention of his powerful father, the Sultan, who blackmails her into finding an ancient lamp. With no choice but to obey, or be executed, Luli journeys with the Sultan's oldest son to find the artifact. In a world where story is reality and illusion is truth, Luli, I'm assuming I'm saying this wrong, it's Loulie, will discover that everything, her enemy, her magic, even her own past, is not what it seems. That's the back. Now, if it's a level of I liked the back well enough, then I will do the first page test. And for me, the first page test is very, very simple. If after I read the actual first page of the book, and I'll jump to chapter 1, right? Like, not the prologue. Sometimes I'll do it with the prologue. Not, in this case, the in-world historical record kind of stuff, but the actual first page of the book. And I'll go, if I like that well enough, and if it's one of those, I like it well enough for me to turn the page, then I will do so. And I'll pick that book up and I will read that book. And if it is not good enough for me to feel a desire to turn the page, then I'm not picking that book up and I'm not reading it. And I don't care how many people tell me, oh, you have to keep going because it's going to get good in the last third. I'm like, I have read too much stuff. And being in law school, I will continue, and when I finish to be a lawyer, I will continue to read things that will be things I have to read because I have to read them. That when I read for pleasure, I don't feel a need to continue to force myself to read things that I don't enjoy. So yeah, that's a thing. But the first page test in this book. When Luli al-Nazari was told by the one-eyed merchant to meet on a small and humble dhow, she expected, quite reasonably, a small and humble dhow. But the dhow was not small, and it was not humble. It was, in fact, quite the opposite. The Ayasham was a behemoth of a ship, with full sails, a spacious deck, an impressive assortment of rooms, and a lofty crow's nest. It was, by any measure, a very nice ship. Had she been here as a passenger, she would have enjoyed exploring it. But Luli was not here as a passenger. She was here as the midnight merchant, an esteemed magic seller, and she had come to meet with a client who was keeping her waiting long past their scheduled meeting time. I will call for you the first hour of moonrise, his message had said. Only the hour had come and gone, and Luli was still waiting for him on deck, dressed in the star-patterned merchant's robe that made her stick out like a sore thumb. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to turn that page. I'm ready to find out what else has happened. So this is, I've already started. I am like, this is a case of, usually if I'm really into a book, I will just keep reading and not stop, as I did with Gods of the Weirdwood. I read that book in 5 hours and was done. In this case, I was interrupted by something, and I just haven't had an opportunity to go back and read this book yet. But once I do, I will probably read this week. Yeah, I could probably read this week. But I feel like, no, I'll hold off on this one this week. Well, hold on. Here's an easy way to do it. Can I get Grief of the Stones ordered to can I get Grief of the Stones ordered in here? And if it does get here, I will read that. If not, I will read this one. But I'm trying to order online as we sit here and talk, but Barnes & Noble is being a butt. So, but yeah, it's very Arabian Nights inspired. What? Barnes & Noble is just being a butt. Your email and password don't match. I love it. I love it. I love when it... Don't we all love modern technology? Coldrake says... from Goodreads, inspired by the stories from 1001 Nights, the Stardust Thief waves the gripping tale of a legendary smuggler, a cowardly prince, and a dangerous quest across the desert to find a legendary magical lamp. Yes, exactly. You could have a lot... I have read all of 1001 Arabian Nights, and it was a brilliant series. And... it was a brilliant book. Well, I guess a series. It's one of those. It's a book, but it really, each of the stories in it could be considered its own thing. All right, finally. Excuse me. Let's go. Barnes & Noble. Can I order this book now? Paperback. Okay. Yay. 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 I don't need 2 copies. I only need 1 copy. Thanks. Wanted to send me 2 different copies. I'm like, okay. Why did it need... I was like, I only need 1 copy of this. Okay. Alright. So... yes, I could get that. Yes, I've ordered it. We'll see what happens when it comes in. But I will probably still read. I want to do an actual book. So I'm getting Grief of Stones, which is a short book. And this is a long book. So I'm going to do 2 short books and a long book this week for a book club. And this will be the long book we'll do. Hold on one moment. The small person is crying. I need to go help her. 1 second. Thank you for your patience, all. The niece was upset, but that's because my sister was taking her home and woke her up. That's a thing that happens. But so Grief of Stones, Bombay Prince, and Stardust Thief are the 3 books I'm going to read for next week. Those will be the 3 book club books that we're going to read. So next week I will give my same kind of spoiler-free review discussion of these books in the first little bit, and then after that will be a spoiler, and I will mark it in both with a big thing that says spoilers when we start talking about that book. So we'll have spoilers marker on it. But that way we'll talk about it. We'll talk about things that we liked, didn't like, positives, negatives, and whether we would recommend this book. Because that's the thing at the end of the day, right? Like, we want more people to enjoy the stories, we want more people to read, we want more people to be engaged, but at the same time I also recognize that it will probably not get here in time. It's yeah, I know, homework, I'm sorry. Okay, so it's saying it's an estimated arrival by the 19th, so it will probably not be here in time. So we'll definitely read this one and the Bombay Prince, which means we'll also read another book, a shorter book, because I recognize that not everybody can read, what is this? 463 pages in 4 hours, or less, probably closer to 3.5. The other book that I'm in the middle of reading, hey Simon, welcome in. Oh, don't worry, Coldrake, I will be posting this on YouTube, and I'll be putting the links to all of the books in the description so that they're there. The other book that I'm in the middle of, and I'm purposely reading slower than I usually do, is David Dalglish, The Soul Keeper. Like, I could have finished this book already, even if it is almost 700 pages. But I'm enjoying, it's one of those, sometimes I slow myself down purposely and I take a break and I walk away from a book and I come back and I'll walk slowly around a book like this one, because it's such an interesting premise. And if I want to tell you, this is surviving the zombie apocalypse with the main character who's a death priest in a fantasy world. And yes, he carries a big sword because he's also supposed to kill, he's supposed to help put the dead back in their graves. And yeah, more Elric than Michael Moorcock. Definitely more Elric. Devin Evanson is a soul keeper, traveling through remote villages as a preacher and healer. But when a mysterious black water washes over the world, the veil is torn, flooding the land with ancient magic and forgotten races. Fire that dances as if it's alive, corpses that walk, and creatures that can manipulate time itself. And not all the creatures that have reawakened remember humanity fondly. As the land grows more dangerous and more chaotic, soul keepers are turning up dead, their bodies transformed into macabre works of art. Devin must set aside his words of peace and accept his new role, slayer of monsters and protector of the human race. No, Coldrake, he is an actual, like, healer and preacher in the beginning of this book. He is straight up got, like, traveling preacher doctor as his title. And when they say fire that dances as if it's alive, He makes friends with Fire Elemental. He becomes friends with a sarcastic, judgy, but silent Fire Elemental who can't talk because he is a Fire Elemental. And I just am loving everything about that. It is indeed a really, really great read. Welcome in, Simon, again. So, alright, so these are, so right now, the books we are going to read for next week are Bombay Princes by Sujata Massey. Which is this book. Coldrake, picture Calcifer, but he can't talk to anybody. But he can still express his judgment and sarcasm without verbal communication. So Bombay Prince, The Stardust Thief, by Chelsea Abdullah. So those are the first, and those are the first two that we're going to read. I'll probably continue to read Soulkeeper, because the other books in the series are out and I want to eventually get to them, but we might not talk about it. The next book that I will read for next week is part of a duology, and I went ahead and bought books 1 and 2 because, hi, I was weak. Look at these covers. Look at this. Look at this beautiful, beautiful cover. Can you see this? Can you see the pretty that is this book? Is that not pretty for everyone? This is Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is a Chinese mythology, Chinese history inspired fantasy novel. You may have seen a lot of books recently are being retellings and reimaginings of various fantasies and myths that are out there. This book, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, is growing up on the moon. Jingyin is accustomed to solitude, unaware that she is being hidden from the feared celestial empire who exiled her mother for stealing his elixir of immortality. But when Jingyin's magic flares and her existence is discovered, she is forced to flee her home, leaving her mother behind. Alone, powerless, and afraid, she makes her way to the Celestial Kingdom, a land of wonder and secrets. Disguising her identity, she seizes an opportunity to learn alongside the Emperor's son, mastering archery and magic, even as a passion flames between her and the prince. To save her mother, Jingyin embarks on a perilous quest, confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. However, when treachery looms and forbidden magic threatens the kingdom, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain in which she is torn between losing all she loves and plunging the realm into chaos. The Daughter of the Moon Goddess begins an enchanting romantic duology that weaves ancient Chinese mythology into a sweeping adventure of immortals and magic, of loss and sacrifice, where love vies with honor, dreams are fraught with betrayal, and hope emerges triumphant. Yes, Coldrake, I firmly agree with you. I have bought books purely on their cover before. This is the first one of those. This is a case in point you know, an example, and then been hated what happened with the reprint. Like I said with Goblin Emperor. Love the original art on that book. Hate with fiery flaming passion the new art. Which is sadness because the original art is beautiful. But this is a beautiful, beautiful book that has, look at this inside art. Look at that beautiful, beautiful map of celestial Chinese mythology, I guess. Making sure it's straight for everybody. Someone understood the assignment, and the assignment was make it pretty. Like, I am not going to be one of those people who are like, oh, I have to have the sprayed edges and have it be fancy all the way around. I'm like, when I put my book on my shelf, it's going to slide in, so all I see is the binding, so why do I care what this part looks like? I'm not going to see it. I do not know, I don't know Coldreck, I haven't read it yet. But this is about the moon goddess who lives on the goddess who lives on the moon, who may or may not, depending on the stories, she's either a dutiful wife who is tricked into taking her husband, who is supposed to be this great general who is being promised immortality. She's either is tricked into taking his immortality potion because she thought it was poison and she was going to save his life, or she steals it because of some jealousy or whatever, but the stories all change. But she's the woman, and she's in Chinese mythology, instead of her being a man in the moon, there's a woman in the moon, and she's immortal. And there's a rabbit. So it's about her daughter. And then book two is this. Look at that. Just look at that pretty. Like, I'm not going to read the back of book 2 because we haven't finished book 1 and I don't want any spoilers, right? Like, if this is going to give me the summary of this book, it's going to include have an expectation that you have finished this book and therefore are prepared to get to this part. So I'm not going to read the back of that, but look at how pretty that is. Like, that just, let's see if we can get some detail work on that figure, on her, the archer, like the girl who's the archer. Is it focusing? And look at those trees. Oh, it's so pretty. Well, it's only a duology, so those 2 books are the whole series, right? There's only the 2 books. So Sulin Tan. Okay. So we've got the Bombay Princes, the Stardust Thief, and Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And I think those will be the 3 books that we read for book club this week. 2 fantasies and a mystery novel. 3 women writers. 3 non-white authors, all women, POC. Chelsea Abdullah is I don't want to say this wrong. Sulin Tan is born in Malaysia. She studied in London. She's and London. Sulin Tan, who's the author of the Daughter of the Moon Goddess, was born in Malaysia. She studied in London and France before settling in Hong Kong with her family, and she's Chinese Malay, right? Chelsea Abdullah. Do we have anything about her? Chelsea Abdullah is an American Kuwaiti writer, born and raised in Kuwait, where she grew up listening to stories about mysterious desert creatures and wily, only sometimes likable heroes. She's lived in various states and got her MA at Duquesne. So she is an American Kuwaiti. And then Sujata Masi is Indian. So that's 3 authors who are all women, who all are women of color, writing very, very interesting, very different fantasy books. Or 2 fantasy and 1 mystery book. So that's those. And then I have the next 2 books from Anne Leckie, Ancillary Sword and Ancillary Mercy. Those are the next two novels in the Ancillary series trilogy after Ancillary Justice. So it goes Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Mercy, and then Ancillary Mercy. So those will probably be the week after. Well, the week after maybe. We'll see. Those will be a quick read. For me, they're a quick read. For other people, they might be long. The Priory of the Orange Tree. I've seen a lot of people recommend it. And I've seen it in Barnes & Noble. And I've picked it up. And I don't know. It's a question mark. Remember how we were talking about, we'll definitely be reading Catherine Anderson. We'll definitely be finishing Catherine Anderson. And then I have this book. This is The Bone Ships. This is book 1 of R.J. Barker's other series that, so R.J. Barker, I read, I have books. I like books. I have lots and lots of books. So I read Gods of the Weirdwood. Hey, Simon, if you're still here, go read this book. If you're still here, go read this book. So I read this book in 5 hours. All 623 pages of it I read in 5 hours. And I'm like, damn, when is book 2 coming? Not for a while, because this book was released in 2023, and it's going to be a while. And then I was like, okay, there's another book series that he has that is out. And this is an example of, don't worry about that's just a random placement for the bookmark to make sure I don't lose a bookmark, but not actually it's not currently functioning as a bookmark. So this is an example of R.J. Barker. And this is an example of Orbit. Orbit, I like your books, apparently. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the books we've most recently talked about are all Orbit published books. The others are Tor and Ace, which, and Harper Voyager for the duology. But Orbit, I generally like your books. I don't think Orbit, however, you can write really good blurbs, because this is the blurb on the back of this book. Okay? Bone Ships. See the title? See the dragon? See the pretty, like, wood cutting art that it's got going on? See the little maps it's got going? Beautiful design. This is the blurb. For generations, the fleets of the 100 Isles have built their ships from the bones of ancient dragons to fight an endless war. The dragons disappeared, but the battles for supremacy persisted. Now the first dragon in centuries has been spotted in far-off waters, and both sides see a chance to shift the balance of power in their favor. Because whoever catches it will win not only glory, but the war. Like, okay, that's a possibility. And then I pick up this book, and I see the beautiful map on the inside. Look at that pretty, like, look at it. Absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if they're actually spotted Coldrake. This is the first couple paragraphs of this book.
Give me your hat. They are not the sort of words that you expect to start a legend, but they were the first words he ever heard her say. She said them to him, of course. It was early. The scent of fish filled his nose and worked its way into his stomach, awakening the burgeoning nausea. His head ached and his hands trembled in a way that would only be stilled by the first cup of ship wine. Then the pain in his mind would fade as the thick liquid slithered down his gullet, warming his throat and guts. After the first cup would come the second, and with that would come the numbness that told him he was on his way to deadening his mind the way his body was dead, or waiting to be. Then there would be a third cup, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and the day would be over, and he would slip into darkness. But the black ship in the quiet harbor would still sit at its ropes. Its bones would creak as they pulled against the tide. The crew would moan and creak as they drank on its decks, and he would fall into unconsciousness in this old flencer's hut. Here he was, shipwife in name only, commander in word only, failure. Like, I have read the first 4 pages of this book. Not right this second, but what I just read you is the first 3 paragraphs. I have read the first 4 pages of this book. The POV main characters are not named in the first 3 pages. It is another brilliantly written, grim, fairy tale-esque, similar to Gods of the Weird Wood. The ocean is a character, and I cannot wait to finish this book. I will probably sit down and read it in the near future. But that is not like... You read the back and you're like, oh, this will be a big adventure story. You know, we're chasing dragons, chasing, you know, whatever. It's a grand adventure. Yay. No, that's not what this author writes. And in the best way possible. This is a book that I think will be brilliant. Oh, look. He even has an appendix with the ranks in the fleet and the 100 Isles. And afterward, and I think I'm looking forward to reading that. So, next week for book club, Bombay Princes by Sujata Massey. Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. And those 3 books are the books we're going to focus on. We're going to be... Yeah, more Stephen Donaldson, maybe even Stephen Erickson, right? Like... Less of a downer than The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, but interesting comparison can be made there. I just think it'll be very interesting to read those 3 books. Daughter of the Moon Goddess, all 3 are going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to talking about them with you guys. I'm going to post on the community page on YouTube when this goes up tomorrow. A couple other books that I'm going to be looking forward to reading and what we should read next. A couple of them are authors that I've been following through Instagram. A lot of diverse authors I've been reading through Instagram. One of them is June Hur, Hur. She writes Korean history inspired stories. The one I'm really looking forward to reading is The Red Palace, and then what is it? Is this one? Yeah, The Silence of Bones and The Red Palace. Those are the two books by June Hur that I'm really looking forward to reading. Both of those I'm gonna have to order though. Might get those out of the library. She is a brilliant, brilliant author. Are you enjoying these more because they're outside the old school Anglo roots? Not necessarily. Like these. This is such a very, very traditional. I've just suddenly realized what this reminds me of, and if Jim, if you're still here, this is another reason why I think you should read this book. If you've actually read Gawain and the Green Knight, and or the descriptions in Lord of the Rings of the Barrel Downs, that's what this would remind me of. Gawain and the Green Knight and the descriptions that Tolkien has in that, and Tolkien's descriptions of the Barrel Downs, and the Fangorn Forest, right? Like Fangorn, picture Fangorn Forest and what you would do if you lived next door to it. Like, that's this book in a grim setting with a main character who, it's not a spoiler, it's the first like couple pages, it's actually in the prologue, was raised to be a chosen one, and then the next chosen one came. I mean, there are things in the wood, Jim. There are things in the wood. Also, giant multiple mile high trees that, you know, if a tree falls in the forest, what do you do? Call Drake. So I like a lot of, I don't like a lot, like, this is very Anglo-centric. I mean, he's an author from Leeds. He's a male, white Englishman. But it's still a really good book. Woman author from India who lives in, or culturally from India. I think she was born, she went to Oxford. I think she was born in the United States or Canada. Let me find out. Hello, Crit. Yes, we are in book club. Oh no, she was born in India and emigrated went to the U.S. when she was 2. Yes, I'm trying to start one. So on the community page, I'm gonna post these on YouTube. It'll be fine. On the community page, and unlike a lot of people who do BookTube or all of those things, it's very rambly. It's very me. It's very all those fun things. Coldrake, I do not need to justify my book addiction. Excuse me. I just have one. I don't need to justify it. But I'll post the books that I'm reading, and then the following week we will talk about them, and mention them, and then I'll post a poll. We'll also talk about which ones I want to read next, and some of those might be based on just how available are they. Here's a question: can I order June Hur
from Barnes & Noble. I can order Red Palace. Can I get the fancy Korean edition? No. I can't. Jim, you know the answer to that question is always brown. So, June Her, who is the author I was talking about, she this is the Red Palace. I have to be honest, her American cover, English cover, is the least interesting of the covers of this book. And Joseon, Korea, or Joseon. There are few options available to illegitimate daughters in the capital city, but through hard work and study, 18-year-old Hyun, I need to get somebody else who reads Korean to read me these names out loud a couple times, has earned a position as a palace nurse. All she wants is to keep her head down and do a good job, and perhaps finally win her estranged father's approval. But Hyun is suddenly thrust into the dark and dangerous world of court politics when someone murders 4 women in a single night, and the prime suspect is one of her closest friends and mentor. Determined to prove her beloved teacher's innocence, Hyun launches her own secret investigation. In her hunt for the truth, she encounters Yojin, a young police inspector, also searching for the killer. When evidence begins to point to the crown prince himself as the murderer, Hyun and Yojin must work together to search the darkest corners of the palace and uncover the deadly secrets behind the bloodshed. Look, either way, he's enjoying Marmalade. But this book, I follow this particular author on Instagram as well. She is absolutely brilliant. And she talks about the history that inspires her novels, and the history she uses in her novels. A large number of them are set, like the Red Palace is actually set about a real-life serial killer in Korea at the time, in the 18th century. Wait, it's not... Curse the Windows! This book. This is her least interesting cover. Right? This is the least interesting cover of this series, of this book. Like, let's look at... Hi. This is the German cover. Look at the German cover. But the one that I actually... is this one. This is the Korean book. This is the Korean edition. This is the Korean edition of this book. Can I just request this cover art? Like, can I get a slipcover of this and put it on the American edition? Yeah, a full color printing at Kinko's, exactly. And then this is her upcoming book, which I am very excited for. A Crane Among Wolves, which is supposed to be released in May of 2024. But she's really active on her Instagram, hashtag not sponsored in any way, of course, but a brilliant, brilliant author, and I'm really looking forward to reading more of her work. Actually, you know what? Why is that still up? That should not be up. I'm sorry, that link should... Nightbot, you're sick. Go home. That's the author's Instagram. She is brilliant, 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 and I think more people should follow them.
That's not what I wanted. Here we go. Okay. What else should we talk about today? I guess the question is, do you have any questions for me about the books that I have mentioned so far? We've talked about Dead Man's Hand by James J. Butcher. We've talked about The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. The Gods of the Weirdwood by R.J. Barker. The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma. Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. Witness for the Dead by Catherine Anderson. All of those books I really, really enjoyed and really think other people should read as well. But I also recognize that not every book is for everybody. And I am not really a person who would be encouraging, basically just say you have to read a book just because it's popular or because you think it's the best book out there or any of those kind of things. I think books are personal and people have different tastes and different moods and might enjoy something for one day and not enjoy it another. All of those valid. Okay. So, Jim, you weren't here. Let me give you a little taste of why that chosen one thing is non-existent. This is not the prologue. There is a prologue. It's like 5-6 pages. Or hold on. It's 7 pages. This is the beginning of chapter 1. The forester watched himself die. Not many can say that. He did not die well. The farm in Wood Edge was the one rock in his life, the thing he had come to believe would always be there. Life had taken him from it, then returned him to it many years later. Though all of those he'd once loved were corpses by then. The farm was mostly a ruin when he returned. He had built it back up, earned himself scars and cuts, broken a couple fingers, but in an honest way. They were wounds and pains worth having, earned doing something worthwhile and true. He liked it here in the farthest reaches of northern Crua, far from the city of Harnspire, where the Rye ruled without thought for those who served them, where the people who lived among the refuse blaming it on the war and not those who caused it. This is a book and a world where you will find out, like in the prologue, like if I read the beginning of the prologue, I'll read the beginning of the prologue. The boy liked Vent Day best. He had always liked Vent Day because on Vent Day the processionals happened and there was no work when the processionals passed the farm. The tools and staves were put away and the mothers made them wear their best clothes and the fathers made sure they were clean. Then they all stood on the grass, cold, whistling around them, trying not to shiver as they waited for the monks to make their way through Wood Edge from Harn towards Harn Larger. The monks always came in the first part of the day, but they never stopped at the farm. The whole point of this book... Hold on a second. Hold, please. 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds. If you do not want spoilers, walk away. If you do not want spoilers, walk away. You have 30 seconds. Da 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 da. I can't continue, otherwise that would be a copyright strike, but that's the theme that you all are listening to, which is actually only 15 seconds, so you know. But it's in your head now. Good, good. Staying hanging around. Okay. The whole premise of this chosen one portion of this book, which is why I'm very sad about whoever wrote the blurb and the definition of this book, is that
this is a world that has so much polytheistic, um, so many different religions, and each of the different religions believe they have found their own chosen one. And then a random other, so this kid who is of the lowest of the low gets taken in by one of these churches to become and be trained as their quote unquote chosen one because he has a special type of magic. And while he's doing that, some other chosen one decides, fuck all y'all, and goes on a killing spree. And so the main character in this book is like, I survived all this shit, it's all bullshit, and now I just want to live on my farm with the wood behind me. And while that's all macro level stuff that's happening up here, the plot of this book is not about the chosen one. The plot of this book is about this dude and the wood that he has to live nearby and the village he has to deal with that are like, you are the lowest of the low and we hate you. But we need you because no one else can go into the wood and do what you do. And, oh, it's not an isekai. It is in no way an isekai. You're not getting taken into a different realm or any of these things. It's much more a, I'm too old for this shit. This is a, I was a great warrior and now I'm just a guy, right? Like, this is a John Wick meets a grim fairy tale novel, right? Like, this is a dude who's really, really trained at killing people really, really well, and he's like, I'm just gonna be, like, I'm done with that. I'm just gonna go over here and be a quiet woodsman and have my random fluffy things that may or may not be sheep in a fantasy setting, and my animals that may or may, that are, like, trained with whistles, which are very obviously not quite dogs that, herd these not sheep things. And you're like, also, again, spoilers up here. See this weird thing that says spoilers? There is no romance in this book. There's no romance in this book. There's not a romance story in this book. And if you've read fantasy novels and you're like, but they introduced a main male character and he met this quirky woman who's a priest of one of the gods who's been disavowed by the great conqueror who's now trying to force monotheism on everybody. And you're like, yes, they are there, but there's not a romance between those two characters in this book at all. There is no romance in this book. There are old school Celtic mythology versions of, there are things in the wood and you don't piss off. You don't take from the wood what you don't need. You give to the wood what it, you only take what falls naturally. You don't break, you don't harm. All of that is a journey into the wood. And you're just like, and that was like, I read the back of this book and I'm like, okay, technically, after having read all 623 pages in 5 hours, technically, the description, the paragraphs of description that are on the back of this book, or the definition of it's a chosen one thing that pops up on Goodreads or anything like that, is not wrong. But it's definitely not right either. It's like, can we talk about, like, okay, it's not a spoiler, even though it technically is the last page of the text of book 1, but it's not a spoiler. It's just a mood and a vibe.
Am I dead? I definitely remember dying. This is not at all what I had expected. It's very dark for a start. You're like, this is yes. Like, if you haven't read the book, don't do, like, I understand that some author, like, a lot of these book artists are, like, some publishers aren't really engaging artists to begin with, and the artists, most of the time, are only getting, like, short blurbs, they're not getting the whole book, but if you don't have a good enough publisher, or the author isn't writing the blurb themselves, then you're getting with like, this cover doesn't belong on this book. Like, these two things are not the same. Like, but this cover, can you see the face in the tree in the background? Can you see that old school Celtic bronze shield? All of this is someone who, if they didn't read the book, got a really, really good description from the author. Oh, look. Cover design by Duncan Spilling. Who is that? Let's look them up. Oh, he's the creative director for Little Brown Book Group. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. But someone who understood the message, understood the memo, appreciated the book, appreciated the work that went into this book, and just the general vibes. Like, there are so many vibes. Okay, now that I've gushed about God's the Weirdwood, any other questions, comments, queries, thoughts, concerns, quandaries, fears, and or inquiries tonight? Yeah, hashtag not sponsored in any way. Although if somebody wants to sponsor me, I'd appreciate it. And the other book that we were talking about was Bakers of Magic, A Fellowship of Bakers of Magic. That's the other book we mentioned tonight. That's this one. This is The Hobbit meets British Bake Off, cozy fantasy, enthusiastic and verbal consent, and the gay orc dads who live next door. This is indie published, and it's really good. I firmly support it. She's a brilliant author, and is really, really good book. It's just cozy vibes. Also, baking recipes in the back of the book. Just saying. Look, if I get sponsored by the Ravnos, you would know it. This book would be... this book would be sponsored by Ravnos. And Dead Man's Hand would be sponsored by Ravnos. Because of the line, right? This book, for those of you who were not here earlier, the reason this book is such a joy to read literally is the following sentence. There was silence that might have been poignant, if not for the buzzing vibrations of a demon dildo. And that was the point at which I had to stuff my scarf in my mouth so I would not break out in massive snort laughter in the middle of the cafe I was in, because it was a case of Chekhov's dildo paying off. So, you know, interesting quote, Drake. Interesting. I'll have to add that to the list. But yeah, exactly. I should indeed engage further with that. But I think that's where we're going to end for tonight. It's 11 o'clock. We're going to head over